Okay. Is it time for me to start? Good afternoon and welcome to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission meeting for Monday, November 13th. This Planning Commission work session is being held at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Government Center, that's 600 East 4th Street, and room 267. The public is always invited to come to these meetings. However, if you are not here, you can view it online, and the media can also view today's meeting. It's being streamed live on the Planning, Design, and Development Department's YouTube page. My name is Douglas Welton, and I am the chairman of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. And we will get our meeting call to order here today. We will begin with introductions, and we will begin introducing commissioners from our left.
Aaron Shaw, Planning Commission.
Will Russell, Planning Commission.
Andrew Blumenthal, Planning Commission.
Shauna Neely, Planning Commission.
Rebecca Wilden, Planning Commission.
Rick Winiker, Planning Commission.
Clayton Seeley, Planning Commission.
Teresa McDonald, Planning Commission.
Terry Lansdale, Planning.
Thank you. We will also do staff, and we'll begin with our planning director, Ms. Gregg.
Allison Craig, Planning Director.
Candace Roy, Planning Staff.
Yolanda Jones, Planning Staff.
Al Knight, Planning Staff.
We will get to our other folks. You want to? Go ahead. Let's do it. Sure. Thank you. Vanna White is here with us today.
Alicia Osborne, Planning Staff.
Kathy Cornett, Planning Staff.
I'm Don Morris, Park Rec Commission.
Kip Kaiser, Park and Rec Commission.
Bert Lynn, Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation Staff.
Katie Lloyd, Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation Staff.
Dolores Shibawali, Commissioner at Large for Park and Rec.
Laura Meyer, County Commissioner, District 5.
Mecklenburg County Commissioner Elaine Powell, representing District 1.
All right. Thank you. We have a full house today and excited about that. We have a number of Park and Rec commissioners here with us today because that pairs nicely with our presentation today. And we're very thankful to have Kip Kaiser and I have worked together over the last several months on several issues, and excited to have Park and Rec here today. Also excited to have county commissioners here today. There should be like cheer. If this was TV, they'd zoom in on you. You go like that. The little cam would come with a little heart over you. But excited to have county commissioners here because the work that we do, it is the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission, and we do want everybody to be aware of land use issues and how they fall. And so excited to have those folks here. We'll get started with the disposition. We got one more just rolled in. Commissioner, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, Courtney Rose, Planning Commission.
Thank you.
RJ Harvey, Planning Commission.
Oh, thank you. I did not. Everybody's keeping me on task today because I sometimes say I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, so you guys make me look good. We do need to approve the minutes that were sent out. Do I hear a motion for the disposition of the minutes from our previous meetings?
Motion to approve the minutes. Wilden.
Second.
It's been motioned by Commissioner Wilden and properly seconded by Commissioner Harvey. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. We will get on to our new business, and there was an item left off the agenda, and I don't know how it could possibly have been left off, but a great award was received. It was not, I did not win an Oscar. It was not like an Emmy or anything of that nature, but I'm going to ask Commissioner or our planning director, Ms. Craig, if she would tell us about an award that the planning department received for work that was done.
I would be happy to talk to you about the award the planning department received. So we received the Daniel Burnham Award for our comprehensive plan. And this is granted from the APA. So this is the National Planning Association, and recognizing at a national level that the work that the department did in developing and adopting and implementing the comprehensive plan was such that they felt that we really needed to be raised on the national stage and be recognized for the work done in that plan. So, of course, Alicia and Kathy are over there from Long Range Planning, really, responsible for leading the day-to-day work of that. But it's something that we feel very honored to have received.
All right, thank you. Let's get a round of applause. Did all the staff get like a Snickers bar or something for winning?
Well, so we haven't figured out exactly which council date is, but one of the individuals from the selection committee that's on the national board will come to a council meeting and present the award, probably to Mayor Lyles. But we're still working out which meeting and all of that. So more to come.
Okay.
We did take cookies.
Full-size Snickers bar. There's some left over from Halloween somewhere, I'm sure. It's true. I went to a meeting last week and they had candy at the meeting. You know where the candy came from, right? And Allison, while we have you on, last meeting when we were here, you talked to us about a grant that the city was pursuing for some housing related activities. If you could just fill us in on that.
Sure. So we successfully submitted that after a frantic and furious weekend of writing. Me and Rebecca Hefner from Housing and Neighborhood Services finally got it submitted at 7:30 the night that it was due. So it's in, but we really spent a lot of time and effort, and it's the request is for $10 million to do a number of different housing related things, like creating a pattern book of pre-approved plans for duplexes, triplexes, ADUs, and townhomes, to create sort of a one-stop shop of staff that only review affordable housing projects, to fast track them through, having a service that helps people that are unfamiliar with managing affordable units, be able to help manage the affordability terms and limits, doing a study of the overall cost of regulations. And that's not just even on the city, not just fees, but just what regulatory costs are from stuff the city does, even down to the building code. I think there's probably a couple other little elements in there, but we should find out if we get it in late January. And we would be really excited if we did. So
that's great.
Stay tuned.
That's
So,
great
and I
work.
appreciate our chair helping to coordinate a letter of support from the Planning Commission that was included in our packet, which is really important in showing that there's community support for doing the work that we're proposing. And so that was really important. We also got a partner letter from the county, which was really important to the application, and then tons and tons of letters from different neighborhood organizations and developers and community organizations, just showing that their support for it. So we'll see. Fingers
Okay.
crossed.
All right. And I hope you all saw, because Candace did forward the letter that I had put together, and that was the best letter ever. Don't you think? I mentioned each of you when I said 14 members of the commission. So feel like you were there as a part of that. Again, thanks and congratulations to the staff. And we are looking forward to positive results from that grant application. We'll get started on our business for today. And one of the things we wanted to do, and I mentioned Kip Kaiser. He is the chairman of Park and Rec Commission. And Kip and I met, what was that, Kip? August? He said I was a cheap date. He bought me breakfast. And we talked about how purchases of land get made from Park and Rec and that sort of thing. We had the Park and Rec strategic acquisitions and land. Am I getting this right? Something. There were like 4 of you, and they came over and they met with the executive committee, and that was October, something like that. And so to kind of complete that transfer of information between Park and Rec and the Planning Commission, we invited Bert Lynn, and Bert is our speaker today. And Bert I see Katie over there. Is it both of you presenting? Or is it, okay. I will let Bert Lynn come up and Bert, do introductions for yourself and introductions for Katie, or Katie can do her own introductions, blah, blah, blah. And we're glad to have you guys and excited to hear what you've got to say.
You stop here. Hold on one second. Technical difficulties.
While we're getting the presentation fired up, thank you, Douglas. Thank you, everybody, for giving us the opportunity to come and share an update on our comprehensive master plan playbook. My name is Bert Lynn. I'm the Capital Planning Division Director for Park and Recreation. I'm joined today by Katie Lloyd, Senior Planner with Capital Planning. For those of you that don't know, Park and Recreation is divided into 4 divisions: Capital Planning, Park Operations, Community and Recreation Center Services, and Nature Reserves and Natural Resources. And so we represent the division that oversees kind of the long-range planning and capital improvement plan projects on behalf of the department. And we also serve as kind of a coordination effort between the design team and whichever of the other divisions are ultimately going to kind of take over and maintain and operate the facilities that we're going to build and improve. So I wanted to, we were asked today to provide a little bit of an update on MEC Playbook, our comprehensive park and recreation master plan. This is the master plan that informs everything that we do at Park and Recreation, from building new facilities to improving existing facilities, expanding connectivity, programming our recreation centers, our nature centers, our parks, and offering special events. So what we wanted to do today was take the opportunity to give you a brief overview of MEC Playbook, walk you through the approved projects that we've got coming up over the next 5 years through the capital improvement plan that was approved last spring, provide an update on the implementation of the plan to date, and then talk a little bit about our next steps. So the Board of County Commissioners approved MEC Playbook in December of 2021. However, we had been utilizing the core parts of that since before that time, and started particularly from a land acquisition standpoint, using the items that were identified and recommended in the plan before that time. So MEC Playbook uses the 4 guiding principles of commit to equity, evolve and grow, tell more stories, and move beyond boundaries to develop comprehensive system-wide recommendations to enhance and improve how we serve the residents of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. So each of these principles are divided into 4 to 5 strategies. And the goals and strategies are what we used to provide kind of clear direction on what we do over the next 10 years. So the principles, goals, and strategies included in MEC Playbook will be applied to key aspects of what we do. And so these are kind of the high-level areas that we want to talk about today. I'm going to hide this. Thank you. Here we go. So we use MEC Playbook to identify and prioritize how we reinvest in our existing facilities that are in need of significant improvement. We invest in new facilities to expand access to recreation and improve connectivity throughout the county, adding and retaining staff to ensure that we provide a well-rounded range of programs and maintain our facilities at a high level, improving engagement to actively involve residents in all aspects of the services that we provide, and in acquiring land to fill gaps in park access, account for growth, and protect natural resources. So traditionally, and up until last spring, Mecklenburg County used a 5-year capital improvement plan process. And so every 5 years, staff would recommend a number of projects. The county board would hear from county residents and then ultimately vote on which of those projects are invested in over that 5-year period. That is changing, and we'll talk about that change here a little bit later in the presentation. But for the projects that we identified and we studied and we submitted for recommendation last year, 85 projects in total, were ranked kind of using the criteria that you have here. So we had some ongoing projects that we needed to back fund. They were underfunded. We've seen tremendous growth or escalation in the cost of construction over the last 10 years, but specifically over the last 3 to 4 years. Some of those were caused by the pandemic, others just caused from a labor shortage standpoint. We had a number of partnership projects where we were working with different groups like CMS or the city or other towns within the county, or at the state level with NCDOT on some of our projects. We took specific or placed specific weight on the what recommendations provided in that playbook. We'll talk a little bit about that in more detail here. We held public engagement kind of throughout that process. We worked with our colleagues at Public Health and used some of the data that they track to prioritize. And then there was some staff identified needs specifically when it comes to amenities and connectivity projects. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute as well. So we broke everything up when we looked at our capital improvement plan into 4 areas. The first were parks and nature preserve projects. And so what you see here kind of mapped are those projects that were funded, a number of nature preserve projects that were actually recommended for funding in a previous capital improvement plan, but not funded then. Those went to the top of the list here. And you can see some of those are kind of spread across the county. A lot of the reinvestment projects that we found were kind of within our high priority or our tier 1 areas, priority communities. From a greenway standpoint, we continued kind of investment and growth in our greenway system. But we also have to start funding reinvestment in some of our older trails. And so Torrance Creek up in the north part of the county, and then the McMullen-McAlpine 4-mile system in the southern part of the county are some of the earlier greenways that we've worked on. A lot of the structures there are kind of wood-based structures. And so if you've been on any of those, you know your wood-topped boardwalks tend to show their age, tend to get a little slick over time. And in some of those areas, we've seen a lot of sedimentation within those creeks. And so we have more floods that are overtopping some of those structures, particularly boardwalks, which take a lot of time for our maintenance staff to go and do. So we've started reinvesting in some of the greenway trails. And just to give you a quick snapshot of where we are on our greenway system right now, we've got 69 miles of greenways on the ground and completed. We've got more greenway trails under construction right now than we've ever had in the history of the department. 15.4 miles in construction, another 15.6 in design that will, for the most part, be going out to bid over the next year or so. And we've got projects that are being overseen by a number of other entities, City of Charlotte being I think, key amongst those from a Cross Charlotte Trail standpoint. And so all in with the projects that we've got funded now, in construction now, and on the ground, we're looking at a total system of 116 miles of greenway trail. I looked back at some of the early information that we had pulled together when we started MEC Playbook in, was it late 19? And at the time we had 50 miles on the ground. So in less than 10 years, we're looking at more than double the greenway projects, greenway miles that we have on the ground. Next, we looked at facility projects, and see these are recreation centers and nature centers. So we're looking at building a new nature center just north of Uptown at Ribbonwalk Nature Preserve, replacing the nature center at McDowell Creek Nature Preserve, working with CMS and upsizing space at the new elementary school down on Audrey Kell Road, and then the refurbished Bruns Elementary School to include a full gym and a classroom within that we can then program outside of school hours as a recreation center. So nights, weekends, and summers. And then full renovations at Tuckasegee Recreation Center and Albemarle Road Recreation Center. And then we talked a little bit earlier about staff recommendations. We continue to get a lot of recommendations from folks, and a lot of them are amenity-based. We need more pickleball courts. You may have heard that over the last little while. We need, where's my closest dog park? We need more spray grounds. We need more skate parks. And so we've started to compile over the last 3 years all of those ideas and identify existing parks that have the support facilities that we need for those uses, particularly restrooms and larger parking areas. In the case of pickleball, you know, space for new courts and buffer space. So from a sound standpoint, you're not creating a nuisance. And identified and funded those projects. Over and above that, we get a lot of requests to improve or make it easier for folks to get to other existing facilities, specifically our parks and greenways. So we identified 12 projects that we're going to go in and improve access to existing facilities. So for a reduced amount, you know, it costs a lot less to add a connection than to build a completely new park. We're expanding access to the facilities that we already have within our system. So all in, you look at 14 park and nature preserve projects, 11 greenway trail projects, 7 facility projects, and 6 park amenity projects. On top of that, beginning in our fiscal year 2025, we'll get $10 million a year for land acquisition. And so that will be kind of the base level amount that we have from a land acquisition standpoint. So by the numbers, when we started with this, particularly within MEC Playbook, one of those founding principles was committing to equity. And we started kind of tracking the projects from a priority standpoint as it's shown within MEC Playbook. And then midway through that process, after we had it prioritized, but before we submitted it to the board, we went in and did a very quick study. And so what you see is where we landed. 65% of the approved projects are within our priority communities, and I'll explain those and show you kind of how those map out in just a minute. And 72% of the funding of the dollars are being spent within those priority communities. 57% are investment projects, so those are new facilities or expansions of existing parks, a next phase. 43% are funding or reinvestment projects. So from a land acquisition standpoint, our efforts over the next 10 years and that you're familiar with over the last 3 years are doing kind of 3 major things. So we're expanding access to public open space by acquiring land in gap areas. And you see those kind of with the dark hatched marks around the county right here. We're working to improve access to our facilities, connect multiple facilities, and grow our system as the city and the county continues to develop and grow. And we've been successful over the last 2 years in obtaining open space through rezoning and land development. And we believe that we'd be even more successful now that the new UDO is in place. We're also continuing the thing that really our department was founded on, which is the protection of natural resources. It's more important than ever that we protect those high value natural resources that we have, maintain tree canopy, and protect our water resources. So when we look at identifying areas to prioritize from a land acquisition standpoint, we identified 17 areas across the county where we had little to no access to public open space. And so those are the first areas that we're going in and really focusing in on in terms of identifying opportunities for land acquisition. On top of that, we identified priority communities. And so those are communities within the county that have above average rates of, or above average percentages of youth and senior populations, renters, residents experiencing poverty, communities of color, and residents who have limited access to cars. And so those are the areas that we're not only looking at first to acquire land in where we don't have access to those public amenities, but that we're also prioritizing our capital improvement plan projects in. So when we go back to the slide where we had 65% of the projects and 72% of the dollars approved in the CIP, Tier 1 projects are all projects located within a priority community across the county. So that's how we're kind of weaving equity into how we're actually making decisions and spending our money. And from a very high level standpoint, when we look at these areas from a staff standpoint, we just kind of numbered our gap areas as we go through, and I'll provide a little bit of an update on where we go kind of next steps wise here in a few minutes. Finally, I wanted to quickly touch on the fact that we've continued to have success, as we have for, I'd say, decades at this point, in obtaining land for along our greenway corridors through the rezoning process and the subdivision review process, not only with the city, but with the other towns within the county. A little more than 2 years ago, we started to expand our requests beyond just greenway and look for areas for future parks. Thereby, kind of as density improves or increases kind of through the development process, we're setting aside open space land and working with the developers to set aside open space land close to where that development is going to be. So we'll talk a little bit about where that's going here in the future. So right now, I'm going to turn things over to Katie Lloyd.
Thanks, Bert. So I get to talk about some of the fun things, how we're implementing MEC Playbook, and some of our successes that we've had to date. So you already saw this slide earlier, but just take a look at the left side. These 5 topics are how we're going to break down some of our process so far and some of the projects that we've been able to get underway and funded since this was approved in 2021. So starting at reinvestment, and again, this is taking care of what we already have. This is our existing trails, our existing parks and nature preserves. In addition to the CIP projects Bert mentioned earlier, we've also been able to get funding through the Board of County Commissioners for equity park improvements at some of our existing park properties that are, for the most part, in those priority communities, as well as ARPA funding to implement improvements on some of our existing parks as well. So you can see as these are distributed across the county, it includes various types of projects. The greenways, which as Bert mentioned, is the first time we've had to think about greenway reinvestment in a capital sense ever, I think, in the history of the department. Usually we've just done quick fixes with operations dollars. And then some other investment in rec centers and others that we've mentioned. A couple things on this. If you want to check out, this is 29 total projects that we have either completed or are currently working on from multiple funding sources. A couple that have been completed in these equity park investment is Enderley Park, Devonshire Park, and we've reopened Amy James Rec Center. So if you want to check out any of those, feel free. Devonshire is one of the cutest little parks we have in our system. I really highly recommend it just to go check it out. Not a ton of funding went in to make a huge improvement on that park. Almost complete. We'll hopefully soon be wrapping up Druid Hills Park and Tryon Hills Park. So be on the lookout for those improvements as well. All right, from a reinvestment perspective, again, we had some ARPA funding that helped us to start a project, actually Monroe Road Park, if anyone lives on near Monroe, which is a partnership with Solid Waste. It's going to be a recycling facility as well. And then in addition to the CIP projects, we also have a number of developers who have decided to or committed to building portions of greenway trails in our master plan. So one of the ones you may have heard of that's recently been completed is the one down in Ballantyne that connects the Ballantyne Reimagined development over to the existing McAlpine Creek Greenway. They constructed a new bridge and about 0.2 of a mile of trail on county property, an additional mile plus on the Ballantyne property that will remain publicly accessible but privately maintained. So really exciting work happening there. Those are the red dots. And then all of the upcoming CIP projects that were recently approved for fiscal year 24 through 28. Bert kind of walked you through the amenities, so I won't go into that too much, but it's very exciting to see all of the investment happening in our gap areas. From a land perspective, so we have been acquiring land at a more rapid rate, I think, than probably ever before, much like the greenways. So a lot of momentum happening and very exciting things happening for staff. So between fiscal year 2021 and 2023, we acquired 1,098.7 acres of land. So a huge chunk of land that's coming into our system. And this is because we've had some record allocations for funding from the Board of County Commissioners. We had 50 million this year, 50 million last year, 20 million the year before. Prior to that, we only had about 6 million per year. And a lot of that was focused on active capital projects and acquisitions that wouldn't kind of hopefully take up that whole 6 million. Because as you guys know in the market, you know, you could easily spend 6 million plus on one acquisition. Huh? Yeah. So in terms of fiscal year 24, we are, I won't say slowing down, but we've got a lot of work under contract or in negotiation. We have 329 acres, and that is $28 million under contract, and then 302 acres, and that's $16 million out offered. So that process takes a while. I don't know that we move as fast as the private sector sometimes, but we have a lot of interested sellers that see the benefit, hopefully, of selling to us to preserve many of these larger properties that often have really great tree canopies and other habitat on the properties. And then just kind of going to the map over here, you can see those gap areas and priority communities and how we're tracking, how we're filling those gap areas. So honestly, I won't go over there too far, but I can use the mouse. One of our biggest successes has kind of been up in the university area. And you can see how we're trying to target properties and think about the walk sheds and the drive sheds to these properties into filling those gaps. So in terms of what we've done now, some of the things we really need to start focusing on are some of these gap areas where we have yet to start to fill those. And then in some cases as well, as you guys, if you're getting into our maps or thinking too much about it, sometimes we may already have some property that just needs to be activated. So if you guys can see my mouse, right? So this gap area up here, for example, we've acquired some property to start to fill the western boundary, but then this green area right here is actually Eastfield Park, and this is an active capital project that we're currently in design on. And so when that opens up, that will expand access to a lot of the residents up in that area. In terms of staffing, MEC Playbook, on top of what we ask for every year from an operational needs assessment standpoint, recommended 36 new staff positions. Some of the highlights of this would be to increase our park regions from 3 to 5. Many years ago, we actually used to have even more than 5 park regions. And so Rick knows, he's nodding his head, that those 3 park region managers are stretched pretty thin. It could take them half a day to get from one end of their region to the other sometimes. So the county's quite large. And if we can expand that at some point to break up the regions to be more manageable sizes for our operations managers, that would be great. We want to expand programming. A lot of our current programming happens inside recreation centers. And so wherever possible, we hope that we can get to the point where we're programming more things in our parks, particularly our local and neighborhood parks, as well as having events in some of our other regional parks. We, of course, want to maintain the additional acreage required that we've been acquiring, because 1,000 acres, though we haven't activated it or built anything on it yet, there is always some issue with a tree. We need to secure the site. We need to add gates. There's a lot of things that happen even before we open it up to the public that has to happen, and it just takes staff time and resources. And then, of course, we want to ask, I'll get to in a minute to talk about how we want to improve engagement, but we also want to add staff to help us improve engagement with the public. So to date, of those 36 recommended positions, we've been able to fund 3 of those. And those 3 positions are really tied to kind of our fiscal side of things. So we had a new fiscal analyst position, and then 2 positions tied to revenue-based programs. And then from an engagement perspective, this is something pretty exciting. This July, we finished up our manual for improving community engagement for our staff. And so we were able to hire a consultant to help analyze all of our existing engagement efforts to date, and then create an engagement framework for us to then apply to all of our future capital projects and all of our additional interactions with the public as well. So with the fiscal year 24 plus projects, we will start implementing this new process, and hopefully you guys will see the results of that. A lot of it is just about organizing ourselves and making sure that we are being very intentional with how we engage projects based on who we're trying to reach and based on what type of information we want to gather from those folks. Another part of our improved engagement is to not just tie engagement to our capital projects. We want to have better relationships with the community members that we're not only building things in, but we're also maintaining and activating our park properties. So developing longer term relationships so that we're not just asking for feedback when we're building something, but that there's this open line of communication throughout the future as well. So the pandemic actually allowed us to get some funding or allocate some funding to start our publicinput.com website. I think many of you have probably been to this or been to one of our project pages. This was a great opportunity to expand the way that we talk to county residents. And we've been able to continue to use this post-pandemic as well. So this has been, what we've seen is that it gave people that I don't think could always attend our public meetings in person the opportunity to participate. And in many cases, we're seeing a lot more engagement on our projects. That's not to say that we're not still offering in-person engagement opportunities. So in terms of moving on to next steps, this is that same map you saw earlier. So we've had, as I mentioned, some successes, specifically thinking about 17, but also areas 2, 7, 8, and 14. We are really trying to focus now on targeting the remaining funding for fiscal year 24 on expanding access in the additional gap areas and priority communities. So our real estate staff, who do a great job with a lot of things that we throw at them, are contacting property owners in those key gap areas and key properties that we have identified as either having really great access to existing neighborhoods or potentially really great natural features. So we do anticipate, because buying a property on the market versus going and seeking out that property may take a bit longer to close. And we also have a lot of ongoing acquisitions tied to our existing capital projects. So some of those greenway projects that are in design, we may still need a good bit of real estate on that. And that again takes a good bit of time to spend down those real estate dollars. Bert mentioned that we're moving from a 5-year capital improvement plan to a rolling CIP. So we're in the process now of planning for our fiscal year 2029 capital improvement plan project list. So these are the projects for 24 through 28. Because we did such a comprehensive analysis and engagement effort last year for the 5-year CIP, now we're focusing, at least for 29, on some of those projects that we weren't able to fund in fiscal year 24 through 28, but also thinking about, what has changed since we made that initial list. We have acquired a lot more properties. So hopefully as we do this rolling CIP, we can start to add in maybe some of those opportunity projects on properties we've acquired. Or there's always changing infrastructure needs in some of our existing facilities or with our partners. So we'll be working on it and watch for opportunities to engage on our fiscal year 29 project here soon. And then something else that's been pretty exciting, you hear us talk a lot about our reinvestment projects. When we were doing the MEC Playbook public input, we heard so many times about how we need to take care of what we already have, and a lot of really specific comments on really specific amenities or really specific paths or issues in some of parks, because most people that we talk to use a handful of parks on a day-to-day basis, and they can tell you anything and everything about every one of those parks because they're walking it or they're looking at it every day. So what we are doing, and we did this through MEC Playbook, and so this is our first time as staff going back, is doing a full facility inventory and assessment. So our capital planning team is looking at every local park, every greenway trail, every regional park and nature reserve, and then every facility. And we've developed criteria to help us analyze and assess that, so assessment from a condition perspective, and then also making sure that we are checking our inventories and our GIS data as we go out there. So we've recently nearly wrapped up all of the local parks or neighborhood parks, and we're about to, in the new year, start our assessment on all the greenway trails. So looking at about 70 miles of trail plus 23 miles of access trail that serve those. And then in the next fiscal year, we'll go on to regional parks and so on and so forth. And then on year 4, we start over and we look at all the local parks again. So it's a great way to get out of the office, but it does take quite a bit of time to, from a staff perspective, to go out and look at these. But we've been able to actually work with our park operations staff as well to join us on these visits. And it's very fun because if we find an issue, half the time they've got somebody fixing it by the time we leave. So it's been a great opportunity to work with them on just laying eyes on our facilities. I'm gonna turn it back over to Bert to wrap us up.
Thank you, Katie. All right, so Douglas and I talked a little bit right before this, and he was like, we also need to talk, I'm sure I've got a question for you about what we do next. And I was like, I've got a slide. We're covered here. So typically, and our plan is to update the comprehensive master plan kind of from cover to cover every 10 years. But things change, as we know. So we're looking over the next couple of years to provide a 5-year update to MEC Playbook. That's something that we'll most likely do in our fiscal year of 2026. And one of the other things that we didn't do in MEC Playbook that we're looking to do over the next couple of years is focus in on our facilities, particularly our recreation centers, and figure out where we have service and where we don't, and look at new recreation centers. That would also help us identify locations for future regional recreation centers as well. And so what we're looking at potentially doing and folding into this update is kind of a longer range vision plan. So Clayton wants to turn 277 into a river. But I mean, there are a number of big ideas that are out there, but they're not necessarily like captured anywhere. And so what we'd like to do is kind of have a long range vision plan that helps us kind of capture those all in one place. And then we can slowly start to plan and chip away at some of those. So I mentioned our regional recreation centers, our larger special event facilities. We did an internal planning study a couple of years ago that you see on the bottom here. What might Grady Cole kind of grow into or evolve into as years go on? Looking at destination parks, when you ask someone, you know, what's the best park? What's your favorite park? Freedom Park always comes to mind, right? But it's one park in one location. And so I look at that as a destination park because a lot of people kind of go to that area. I think it makes sense for us to go in and improve or build new parks like that around the county. Back Creek Park is a 125-acre property that we have shown on the top here. That's on the eastern side of the county that has great potential to be a signature park or a destination park kind of within our system. So those are some of the things that we're looking to do kind of over the next several years. Here's my contact information and Katie's contact information. That's all the information we had kind of prepared today. So I think we'll open things up to any questions or comments.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you, Katie. That was great. Bert, you wiped out almost everything on my sheet, but I still have more questions. And we'll take questions from commissioners. Did I see Commissioner Seeley? Go ahead.
Yeah, can you speak more about how private entities can participate in this process? Previously, you mentioned Northwood Investments, participation with Ballantyne. So with there being developers interested in building out parks alongside future MEC parks, how do they start the process when the adjacent parcels are not currently funded? Are we planning on how private parties can utilize tax incremental financing, for instance?
Yeah, so the county's economic development department kind of oversees the tax increment grant program and process. I would say we've seen an uptick over the last couple of years in conversations that they have started with developers that we've been brought into. We see that as kind of one of the biggest opportunities of growth within our department. And over the last, I'd say 6 weeks, we attended the National Recreation and Park Association Conference in Dallas, specifically to learn how their city's Park and Recreation Department has worked with their equivalent of Charlotte Center City Partners and their equivalent of Partners for Parks in identifying and cultivating successfully those types of relationships. So not only from a development standpoint, but also from an operational and a maintenance standpoint as well. We have a lot to learn and a lot of growth there, but it's something that we're kind of actively starting to pursue better ways to do.
Another thing I'll add is that we don't yet know how the rolling CIP will change things for us, but I hope that it will provide more flexibility as we think about things. Instead of having to just decide everything every 5 years, we'll have opportunities along the way to maybe reevaluate or look for those unique opportunities.
Yeah, I'm sure y'all know exactly what park I'm talking about. So, and then I just have one other question, and it's specifically around the rail trail. I've been seeing significant people pressuring for answers, talking on social media, trying to figure out who is actually managing specifically the pedestrian crossings in the South End, just because there's quite a bit of confusion, congestion, and some stresses around specifically West Tremont and West Boulevard. So, and just general safety there. So I was curious who I can actually point people to talk to, because thus far they've been turned away by DOT, the city, and the county.
So
That's a good question.
Yeah. To my knowledge, the county does not actively maintain the rail trail. It is done by a combination of CATS, the city, and private landowners. Because I think there are portions of the trail that are actually on private property, and I don't know from an easement standpoint kind of how those exist. So I would say if it has to do with pedestrian crossing in that area, CDOT is going to be the folks to reach out to there. If it has to do with another specific section, then I would say maybe start with CATS. I don't know. Do you know the answer? Do you want to add some?
I mean, it's not an easy answer, is the short answer to that. But just if you could share your comments, then it really is a combination of planning and CDOT and probably some others. So if you could send them our way.
Before we go on to our next question, I also wanted to invite, if any of the planning commissioners or park and rec commissioners have a question, please feel free to ask. And also our county commissioners, if you guys have a question, just raise a hand and we'll throw a microphone at you. You'll have to catch it. Did I see Commissioner Russell has a question?
Yeah, meeting wouldn't go by unless I had a question. So in this case, I have two and they're related. One being, first of all, thank you for the information. I think it's very exciting what you're doing. Has any consideration been given to doing like smaller scale parks like the Devonshire and like the Dowd Park that's over in Ashley Park part of town? Has any consideration been given to doing more of those smaller half acre, full acre type parks in the area? And then I'll follow up with my second question.
The answer is yes. So when we've been working with developers and property owners through the rezoning and subdivision review process, typically it's on larger projects, and what we're asking for are kind of those smaller types of parks that provide kind of the entry level type of amenities that you would find at a park. Playground, picnic shelter, small lawn area, maybe some fitness equipment or something like that. A lot of the other parks that we're looking at from a growth standpoint, I would say we probably have more undeveloped parks that are larger. And so that's where the reinvestment in our existing parks through the CIP, whether it's funded or potentially going to be funded in future fiscal years, or through our equity project, we've been going in and trying to maximize the types of amenities that we have in those parks. So yeah, we're not only looking at like the big stuff, we're looking at it from a neighborhood standpoint as well.
Okay, that's good to hear. And then as a follow-up to that, as you look at those smaller parks and then you look at the rezonings that are coming in, you're getting these dedications across the city and the county. Has any consideration been taken toward taking those dedications and looking at how they connect parcel to parcel from park to park so that you end up doing like a chain of parks or a pearl of parks like you've got in Minneapolis. Something that would address, I think, the issue with communities of need, but also providing kind of a natural link between the county.
Yes. So part of that process of us going in and requesting land for either from a greenway standpoint or from a park standpoint, part of our assessment is to see what we have kind of nearby. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think in terms of connecting things, what we control is the Greenway Master Plan. I'm gonna go back because I like a map. Oh my gosh, how many slides? Where's my Greenway? Okay. Dang it.
It's there.
I'll talk while we go.
Yeah.
So when we're requesting these parklands, there it is. So when we're requesting the parkland dedication, many times we're asking for parkland adjacent if that development is also on the Greenway Master Plan adjacent to the Greenway itself. And so we've had some good successes up in Toby Creek. We're getting 9 acres. It was 6. I think I might have something to do with that. 9 acres of land up there adjacent to the Greenway Trail. So that would be a nice little small local park that's tied to the Greenway that then can be connected. Multiple neighborhoods can use it. And then thinking about the Greenway too, historically we've built the trail and in some cases worked on the stream, but how do we amenitize some of our greenways as well? We did it great in Midtown. There's a lot to do when you walk on that section of trail, but on some of the other ones, there's not a lot to do along the trail unless you're getting off of county property into some of the neighborhoods or some of the commercial areas. So how do we amenitize in terms of Minneapolis, which we just got back from there? It's very beautiful. How do we amenitize and create those linear experiences all throughout the county?
Awesome. Thank you.
Did I have Commissioner Lansdale?
Yeah, I've got a series of questions, but I'll try to be quick about it. The first thing I want to talk a little bit about is about definitions. We've been offered resistance from our county manager over the past couple of years that county does not do transportation. 2 questions thus far really are transportation related. How do you get access to? How do you connect these parks? So until the wheels fall off a train, the county didn't believe that, but now that the wheels have fallen off the train, we got county focusing on transportation. But the question I have is specifically to that, all jokes aside, is that I would urge you and urge staff to look closely at the UDO definition of greenways. It's lacking. It's confusing. I also would like to have staff look at the streets design manual. Again, in your silo, the MEC plan, awesome. Trying to connect those silos, not a lot of activity there, it seems. So looking at those 2 places, we'd love to be able to see a text amendment for clarification if staff needs that. As we look through the MEC playbook, I have a lot of issues, and recently when I shared it with staff this morning, I got a response back from CDOT regarding a specific issue that I'll bring up here right now. It really deals with wayfinding, right? I look at the plan and it says it is recommended, it is suggested, it should be included. Eventually, those kinds of adjectives and descriptors here, but safety wayfinding is critical and it's absent. Mapping of our greenway system is critical and it's absent. Delaying those opportunities of allowing people to understand how to access and get to a local park, a destination park, an exploration opportunity is critical. We've got an email this morning from CDOT saying, how do you figure out how to get to these places? Once you get on it, is there a mapping system associated with safety, destination, and transportation involved in that? I think MEC playbook is missing. It's a big empty silo in that piece. For this group, for me, I met with members of Forsyth County and Guilford County. You're not alone. You're not alone. But we can follow groups like Durham and Wake County who are finding solutions to these issues in real time, and not a delayed opportunity, but an opportunity now to provide a safety wayfinding and a safety opportunity for all users of parks and greenways across our county. So more of a comment, more of a statement to you. But the last thing I'll say in wrapping up is I'd urge everyone here to take a look at their parking guidelines and the MEC playbook for the types, the three-tiered facilities that the MEC Playbook offers up for creating parking lots for Mecklenburg County Parks and Recreation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lansdale. And I will just tag on to Terry's comment about wayfinding. Anecdotal story, my community officer from CMPD would like more wayfinding because they've had a couple of cases where they had to go find somebody and on Little Sugar Creek Greenway, whatever, that person couldn't tell them where they were. So, I know that there are signs, they're like the mile markers down, but they had no clue.
So just 2 weeks ago, we had a press conference that shared the news of our improved wayfinding system that is being implemented right now. So you'll notice on most of our greenways, particularly the newer ones, that we have identifications at access points, mile markers at every quarter mile, kiosks at parking areas and kind of major on and off ramps kind of onto the greenway system. What we've done over the last really 12 months is gone in and mapped the existing wayfinding that we have, pinpointed it, shared that information with 911 and the emergency response systems across the county. And so the campaign is very simple. You identify on the sign the greenway that you're on and the mile marker you're on, or the address of the access point that you're on closest to where you are. And that spot is pinpointed within emergency response. Also included within that is the closest and most direct access point for them to get to you where you are on the trail. So we're in the process right now of implementing phase 1, which is putting those wayfinding signs out where we have our current and up-to-date wayfinding system on our trail. Phase 2 is in fabrication right now, which is to go back to the older greenway systems where we have one of our older wayfinding systems in place and to update that with the newer system. And then as new projects come online, that 30+ miles that we've got in construction and design right now, as those come online, all of that will be associated with it as well. So I'll find the, I think we've got I don't know if we've got the website up yet on it or not, but I'll find the information. I'll make sure to send it to the whole group.
I'll also add that in addition to the physical improvements and then the GIS data that we share with emergency services, there's an ongoing marketing campaign to let users know that the system's there. Yeah. And so it'll be yard signs out on the trail, social media posts, as much as we can do to get the word out so that people know what to look for as they're walking and hopefully can be more aware of their surroundings.
Yeah, we studied what some other entities do. We looked at Minneapolis, we looked at Indianapolis, other larger municipalities that have fairly vibrant kind of trail systems. And what we found are kind of two options. One is you go in and create a whole naming convention based on that, which we looked at but thought, that might require us to add more signs and it might get more confusing. Or you utilize the system that you have in place and you use those mile marker numbers or those addresses that are on your access trails and use those as your pinpoint locations kind of throughout the system. So that's the route that we went.
Thank you. I've got Commissioner Blumenthal and then I'll get Commissioner Winokur and then Celia.
Thank you again for the presentation. Several questions have already been answered, just kind of two quick ones and then a quick plug for our December meeting, Katie. But one is we actually in our planning committee meeting last month had Bart Landis with the Catawba Lands Conservancy come present to us. And one of the questions we asked of him, I feel like, keyword of your presentation has been partnerships, right? So one thing that we asked of him was, have you worked with, Park and Rec at all to try and program some of the easements and some of the properties that they have under their control in the county? So kind of to flip that question around to you, do you work with the Lands Conservancy or organizations that are similar to try and, utilize land that's already conserved and program that somehow?
We have looked at it more from the standpoint of acquiring new properties and doing that in partnership with either Catawba Lands Conservancy or the Davidson Land Trust. In terms of activating the projects or the properties that they have, a little less so. I know we're looking kind of in the Reedy Creek Greenway area. They've got properties in that area that we have talked with them and talked with city staff that own some I guess it's tree canopy properties that were acquired out there for future trails. I can't recall.
I was gonna say, one of our biggest successes in working with them is Little Sugar.
Yeah.
So Little Sugar Creek Greenway down to the state line, which was recently completed, in order to make that final connection to the neighborhoods in South Carolina. After years of effort, Carolina Thread Trail, which is Lands, was able to purchase 2 lots from the development in South Carolina in coordination with Mecklenburg County's project to build the trail. And it provided a really important connection down to South Carolina, which is 3 to 4 miles then away from Ann Springs Close Greenway, to extend their system to the south. So I think a lot of our wins have been really small project specific opportunities, but I definitely think there's opportunity to expand that.
Awesome, thank you. And then second question is really, I was very kind of intrigued by the destination parks idea, right? Freedom Park being one with the potential for others. I guess less of a question than more of kind of a comment, right? I think that size doesn't always matter, right? In the sense that, you know, one of the most iconic destination parks in the country is going to be Millennium Park in Chicago, right? And so as you look at local resources, our local artists, our local neighborhoods, I think that there are ways to curate destinations in much smaller areas than something like a Freedom Park. And so again, less of a question, more of just something to consider because again, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, be it Romare Beard and something else, right?
I do want to add one thing to that is that in Mech Playbook, kind of a lesser known recommendation in there is that we've changed slightly our classification system. Whereas previously our classification system was largely based on size. If it's so many acres, it's of this park. If it's so many acres, it's of that park. We really talk more about how it functions. So you have parks like Veterans Park. It's not very large, but there is a lot happening there. And we know that that functions like a regional park. So thinking about function over size, because no 5-acre park is exactly the same, and you may only be able to develop half of an acre of it. So it's a good point.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And then last, I alluded to this a minute ago. I do not have the exact date off the top of my head, but Katie will be kindly joining us in December.
19th.
All right. It's the 19th. It's the 19th at our planning committee meeting for a much more in-depth look specifically at greenways. I'm sure that the conversation will shift around a little bit, but if you are interested in the greenways, want to learn more about that, Katie will be coming back and we are very excited about that. Thank you guys again.
Thank you, Commissioner Blumenthal. And now on to Commissioner Winokur.
Thank you. It's hard to form words because my head is spinning so much with how much has gone on. For those of us who are watching at home, from the Parks Wars of 2017 through 2019, you know, those old veterans who are looking at, it was once suggested, you were talking about wayfinding, Terry, somebody was trying to pitch the Greenway Advisory Council at the time with doing commercial signs, you know, like Coca-Cola sponsored wayfinding and stuff like that. And I mean, desperate times. But thanks so much to our county commissioners that have really understood and grasped how much of a treasured resource our parkland is. It is one of the few ways we can continue to help preserve our environment and our urban buildup as we go along. And everybody in this community loves parks. And so I think that it has been taken for granted for so long in terms of what resources we did and did not have available to make it happen. You know, obviously the county budget is $2 billion compared to the city's budget of $4 billion. So we know who the 400-pound gorilla is in the room. But with the share that the county has allocated to parks, they represent such a huge return for our community. It is basic infrastructure. It is just like our sewer system and our water system and our trash system and everything else. It is one of the 4 legs on a stool for a world-class community. And I'm just so excited to hear these incredibly sharp professionals have the tools that they need to really go forward. I mean, we were dead last in the nation and we're climbing back, but they're looking to climb back, not just climb back, but leap back and really make, I think it's central to making this a livable community. And so when we talk about our development, it has to be hand in hand with parks. And I think that everybody on every staff level in the city, in the county, understands that and appreciates it. But we have to understand how precious it is, how it can be taken away in a heartbeat. The resources that are here, I definitely don't take for granted. And I really appreciate all of your time and effort and the vision that you guys have brought to making our community a better place. So thank you so much. And I think the last thing we need to comment about is how CDOT needs to get on board as well. So I think that's the last piece. Thank you.
They're not in the room. We might as well throw them under a bus.
To follow up on that comment, for instance, we're talking about like greenways or safe access to parks. There's only so much the park can do to make crossing Albemarle Road not a life-threatening experience for a small child and a grandparent. And trying to go by, we have our classic Cross Charlotte Trail, Little Sugar Creek Greenway system. Yet CDOT can't block off one lane on Kings Drive in front of the hospital. Those are areas that these guys have no control over. But that's why all of us, citizens, not staff, citizens, need to be jumping on what's important in our community, and parks has been long overlooked. Thank you.
Thanks. We're going to go to Commissioner Rhodes, and then I'll come back to you, Commissioner Seeley.
Thanks so much, Bert and Katie, for your presentation. I just had a quick question. When you talked about the priority communities and how you have the tier approach, just curious if you created that tier approach from the comprehensive 2040 plan. Was that in mind when you guys kind of put that together?
We wanted to,
It was kind of happening simultaneously.
yeah, we were working with city staff on the 2040 plan when Met Playbook was going on. We looked at models that other entities were using kind of across North America, because I'll add Vancouver in that because they've done a very good job of figuring out a way to integrate being equitable in how you make those decisions. And so a lot of the ideas came from some of those other places as well. Agency Landscape and Planning was our lead consultant, and they were familiar with a few of those as well, a few of the mechanisms there. But there are quite a bit of similarities between Met Playbook and the 2040 plan. A lot of the big ideas that are in the 2040 plan are kind of carried into Met Playbook as well. We were fortunate that both of those documents were being kind of produced at the same time. And we had, was it monthly? Kind of monthly meetings. It was called the Big Plans Call. So it was those two plans, and I believe maybe the strategic mobility plan was going on at the same time.
Maybe the Center City Vision Plan. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. So we were working kind of at the same time with one another to make sure that what we were saying in one was carried through, or at least kind of on the same page in the other plan.
Allison, did you have something you want to add with that?
Yes, real quick. I wanted to mention that I think the timing is aligning again because we'll be doing a 5-year update to the comprehensive plan. But the other thing that I wanted to mention too is that tonight we're going to release the results from the tree canopy analysis work that we're doing, and that will feed into, we haven't figured out what we're calling it, the Urban Forest Master Plan Update, or if it's Tree Canopy Action Plan 2.0. But that's going to be in that 24-25 time period. So it sounds like it's going to interact well with your update too. So I was texting Tim, talking about how can we be coordinated and collaborative. So hopefully we can work on that. I think y'all certainly were involved in the comp plan, and I think in TCAP too when we did it before. But I just think we're aligning again. So we'll have more big plan calls.
Sounds good.
Courtney, were you done? Commissioner Seeley?
Could you go back to the slide with the project list?
Oh, with the 24 through 28 project list? They need the spreadsheet.
Yes, spreadsheet.
It might be at the end.
It's at the end.
Oh, no.
There you go.
Because I was live tweeting this.
Live tweeters.
Was that your question?
Yeah, Commissioner Seeley knew I would try to beat him to it on Twitter, so he's ahead of you.
Commissioner Seeley's on Twitter. I've got Commissioner Lansdale again, and I will be last whenever everybody's gone.
I apologize for offering a second question in this round robin. I know it breaks protocol, but I appreciate the commentary about projects and crossing the roads in front of parks. I would urge staff to present CDOT and the State Department of Transportation a list of safety enhancement projects, especially for mid-block crossings at park and rec locations. That would be your first key language to use to get that. There's dollars available, federal dollars and state dollars available for safety projects, mid-block crossings on state roads. Thank you.
Commissioner Powell.
You know, I couldn't be quiet for the whole time. Katie and Bert, you give me hope for the future. And I really am so thankful that the Planning Commission invited park staff and the Park Commission to be here. Because quite often I've heard, this is year number 34 of me working to help protect natural resources. And I keep hearing things like, that's the county's responsibility. And so it's all of our responsibility. And I'm really glad how you introduced the meeting. Like, this is the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. We can't do good work without working together. And Park and Rec does so much to protect and preserve our natural resources and our health and wellness and the things that people love and consider quality of life. And the reason, and it's so important to me, like, why is it important that they're giving a presentation, is because I would like for every person in a decision-making role or anybody who advises to have a mindfulness of what will this development, how will this development impact our natural resources, our parkland? You know, if I'm guessing that when Bert makes a minimum recommendation, like when a rezoning comes to Bert, and you can speak to this, Bert, if you want, but he makes a minimum recommendation. So what comes to you is minimum. But quite often, it would be nice to have more, and would also be nice to know if we had input into where it could be versus a very undevelopable part of that parcel. So quite often, we get the part that the developer didn't want, and that creates a burden on us. And so I just want the mindfulness. And I love what the Park Commission or the Planning Commission has been working on is environmental factors, like looking at them, asking for more. You guys have the right to ask for more. Like, if you want to understand more about a former Superfund, FUND, former Superfund site, you have the ability to ask for more. And I know your binders are big. I've seen people take pictures of the binders. I really appreciate the work you do. But, like, you know, dig in and ask more questions if you need them. Because what happens is when something goes to city council and then they hear all the backlash, they're calling us saying, oh, what is this brownfield? You know, what's going to happen? And I look through the notes that have been provided from you, and I think, oh, I wish they had dug a little deeper. So just to have the mindfulness about asking more, and even in pre-development meetings, like if anyone has access to pre-development, that's a great time to make a difference. We tried, before I was elected, I was on the Park Commission, and we tried to make more of a difference for the River District. We asked for more than 100 acres of dedicated parkland, and I think we got 20. Which it is still like gut-wrenching, but just have the mindfulness that we're all working together, and you can't just say, oh, that's the county. And I guess the other thing I want to say, 50 million a year sounds big, and it is big for us. Huge compared to the 6 that wasn't even guaranteed for parkland, but the needs are greater than 1 billion. And what happens when it becomes so dense that you start to change your goals. It used to be 26 acres per 1,000 people, and that's not possible anymore. So now we're trying to eke above 19 acres per 1,000. And so the needs are greater than $1 billion to maintain that. It's very hard. What happens when you have a commitment to protect and preserve tree canopy, and then you let everybody cut the trees down? And so, I mean, I've just seen significant loss of tree canopy, especially in West Charlotte recently. But these are the questions, like, we need to do a deeper dive. And I'm just asking you to have that mindfulness and just know how much I appreciate the work that you do, because it is such important work. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we got questions from anybody else? Commissioner Kaiser?
I'd like to thank Chairman Welton for inviting us. We learned a lot about what they do. You've got 2 commissioners here that are of the 5 that totally support Park and Rec. I just want you to know that's 2 of them, and be glad you got them. The process of acquiring this $50 million of land they've been approving, hopefully they'll approve that again, is a big deal. And maybe Bert can go through the process that once they decide what to buy over there, that it goes through. I think that would be helpful. I'd also like to make you aware that we have made an annual report to the Park and Rec, to the Board of County Commissioners, and I'd like to be able to send that report to you. That's our recommendation. So if we can get all your emails to you.
If you can just
almost like Whitaker, he just said something that he could have written our introduction to it a while ago. So there's a lot of things that are up there. They've talked about some of it, but the process of acquiring this property is a big deal, and maybe they can explain that to you.
Okay. Thanks, Bert. Do you guys want, and that was vaguely one of my questions, is, we just went through the school board, approved a bond, I guess, 6 years ago, and then went through hell and high water to find some land to actually spend the money on. Are you guys finding that you're in those straits as well? Or is it a little bit easier because perhaps you're going all over the county? But certain parts of the county now, land is what it is. So what's the temperature of the land acquisition party?
I think you're right on the money there. It's much easier in certain parts of the county. And so when we have alignment of a property owner who has a property on the market that is within a gap area and within a priority community, that's a slam dunk because you've got a willing seller. Typically, you're just a few months and that transaction's complete, if we can come to agreement with the property owner on a price. There are other areas where there are fewer properties that are on the market, or there are fewer opportunities. We're not necessarily going to go and buy a small piece of property in the middle of Tank Town because no one lives there, and so no one can walk there. So we also have other land use things that we consider as to where we're looking for those properties. It's going to become more and more difficult to find properties. At some point, a lot of the greenfield properties are going to be in use or developed. And so then we might have to look at, development properties that are underperforming or something like that. That's hopefully years and years down the line. But those are things that we're kind of thinking about as we move forward and think, over the next 10 years.
Next question. You guys put your map up and it was gap areas. And I thought, well, we kind of know where people are doing rezonings. Is there enough information exchange between the 2 groups, the group doing zoning and the people doing land acquisition are you in a happy place with that, or do we need to do a better job?
I'll let Katie answer that because she does more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right now we're, I believe, getting all rezoning pre-subs. So we know from the pre-sub level what's upcoming, and then we review all City of Charlotte rezonings, and then what land development projects that are assigned to us. So we are looking at a lot of projects and definitely using this information with how we make requests.
Okay. All right. As long, because that seems like one of those places like Elaine talked about of let's do the best we can with making sure that that information gets smeared around between the two parties. Because I could easily see a map with here's something coming. Oh, it's in one of your gap areas or whatever. Even if it's outside of the gap area, it may be workable, that sort of thing. Second question or third, I don't know. I'm losing track. Partnerships. You guys talked about partnerships. And I know in my neighborhood, CMS, there was a school there, and the neighborhood redeveloped into a nice little park area on CMS land. And a former Park and Rec director said that Park and Rec was going to take over that. That never actually happened. Is there I understand there are challenges with working with CMS and making partnerships, but are you guys progressing in a direction you think you can do that more in the future?
We are, yeah. So we have an ongoing monthly coordination meeting with CMS from a long-range planning standpoint. The first thing that we're looking to do is develop a partnership agreement that covers all of their properties that we have a partnership with them on, rather than doing it property by property. What we found in the past is if there's a principal transition, the new principal might have a different outlook of how the campus should be used after hours than the former principal. And so what we're looking to do is do that on an umbrella basis and then expand into additional partnerships, like potentially going in and helping upgrade some of the sports facilities at middle schools. High schools are typically kind of fairly well invested in, middle schools are not. And so is there a possibility for us to go in and help from a capital standpoint that might transition into potential use on the weekends of that space for track meets or something like that?
Thank you. And I think this is my last question. It might be vaguely long-winded. I have this lovely chart on my computer I carry around, and it's like the population growth of Charlotte between 2012 and 2017. And between the ages of 20 and 34, they accounted for more than 100% of the growth in the county's population. And so those people don't generally, although they do now, play pickleball. Is the demographic remodeling of the county, because it's, average age is slightly going down, average income's going up. Are those things that change the programs that you guys are thinking about offering 5 years from now? Are you looking at that, or, how do you take that into account when you go forward?
Yeah, so part of that would be just through program participation, programs that are highly participated in or highly requested.
Okay.
Move up the list if participation goes down. So a lot of what we do is we're just serving as a conduit between what the residents are requesting and then what we ultimately are providing.
And Kip and I had this conversation of, how many parks are we going to put into South End because of the amount of people that have moved in there? And it's a different adventure because now there's no place to put a park, right? Vaguely. We could put one in Brook Hill, but that's another discussion we're not going to have here. Okay.
Add into your demographic question is that as part of our master plan update as well, we do statistically valid surveys to think about demand and unmet needs for different amenity types. And so that is looking at a statistical sampling that matches what exists in Mecklenburg County at the time we do the survey. So that's also how we can stay on top of our specific trends in terms of needs that are being met or not.
Okay. I'm assuming you guys probably do that survey once a year or something goofy like that.
It's not once a year.
It's every 5 years.
Okay. All right. Cool. Anybody else got any questions? I would like to thank Bert and Katie for being real smart people to come and help us be smarter people over here. Thank you very much.
Do I need to stop share here?
Cool beans. Do we need time to transition back on computers and stuff like that? Nope, we're good. Cool. Guys, we've got like 3 more items on the agenda here, and let's see if we can get through those probably relatively quickly. In the agenda packet that Candace sent out to you all, we had the work plan, which we talked about last month, and I need a motion for the disposition of the work plan. Do I have a motion to approve it?
Motion to approve work plan, Wilden.
Second, Seeley.
We've got a motion to approve the work plan has been properly moved by Wilden, who is the motion master today. And yeah, and Seeley has properly seconded. All those in favor of approving the work plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Now it's that fun time where I go around and ask you all what you all did during the month. And I'm going to begin with Commissioner Rhodes. So please, this is, again, this is our notion of what we do. We get out in the community and we see people. What do we talk about? Blah, blah, blah. I'll go last, but we'll begin with Commissioner Rhodes.
Just to know, October was the longest month ever. And now November is the shortest month ever. I don't get any of this, but nonetheless, my cohort, Leadership Charlotte, we actually just had our politics day last Thursday. So that was a mixture of public health, as well as the assistant city manager and the county manager, as well as city council men, as well as Dr. Blitzer, who is phenomenal to break down the data points and of Mecklenburg County and just the state of North Carolina and why we are a purple state. It's very interesting to just kind of look at those metrics. So that was a day full of that. So it was just interesting to be in a room with people who are leaders in our community and some of the things that they heard, especially, I thought you guys would have this to be funny. City Commissioner Councilman Driggs pointed out something about the zoning, about how how you hear inconsistent, but we pass inconsistencies. And so somebody was like, what the heck does that mean? Like, what are we doing? Like, I was appalled. I went to that meeting and we're just all falling. So my push and my call to action was for people to look at our board and join it. If you were confused about what he was saying, or you were confused about the zoning, you need to join our board. If you're interested in those informations, if that meeting was a bit overwhelming for you, you need to join the board. So that was my urge to push them there. So was the bulk of my month, and also just involved the kids' school, which is always good to urge parents to get involved on the advocacy side for our PTA. So just to kind of push people to get involved as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Shaw.
Not as much as Commissioner Rhodes had done over the course of the month, but I did attend as part of our kind of allocation of responsibilities, the Northeast Inner workshops on October 28th and also the Tuesday online one, which I believe was the 24th of October. Similar feedback to, I know what others have given, that Kathy does a phenomenal job of keeping it on task, keeping it moving, sort of bringing the questions, sort of, aggregating the questions and feedback in a way that's productive and constructive as well. And was great to hear from the community and, and attend those as well.
Commissioner Russell.
Thank you all. So for last month, the biggest news for me is that I have joined the University City Partners Planning and Development Committee. So I will be bringing some expertise to that, as well as working on some local rezonings. My next big thing that I'm going to be working on are text amendments. Yes, you've heard me talk about those so many times. So I've got a couple of ideas that are kicking around in my head that I will put in a paper soon. So I'll be sharing those with you as they come out of my head and become official on paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Russell. By the way, look in chapter 37 and look who can submit text amendments. It was surprising to me, but go on. Commissioner Blumenthal, do you want me to come back to you?
No, I'm good. I'm just going through trying to remember it all. No, it was good. I had a,
The brain gets
had
bigger
a
when
var-
you're old.
No kidding, man. No, kind of a variety of things. Like Commissioner Shaw was at the community area planning, the Tuesday virtual and the Thursday in person for the Northeast, Middle, and Outer, which was, as we kind of reported on a little bit more in the planning committee meeting, was very enlightening, actually. On top of that was attended the UDO text amendment session that Alan led. The virtual, they were all virtual, but the evening one, as well as the Urban Design Awards, which was actually really enjoyable as well. One that's a little bit off too. I am not a Rotary Club member, but attended the Rotary Club meeting a few weeks back when our governor candidate Josh Stein was the speaker, and just hearing about what he's thinking with the city, the state was very interesting. And then joined our esteemed chair at the Plaza Midwood Neighborhood Association quarterly meeting last month, which they were all celebrating their social district. However, it was also great to get their perspective on things as well.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Neely.
So I think the biggest thing I did this month was the State of Real Estate Summit. I think was last week. Several of the real estate agents in the room and our chair was there to discuss what's going on as far as real estate in the Charlotte area. Lots of discussion regarding affordable houses and planning and information like that. So very eye-opening.
Cool. Commissioner Weldon.
Hi. Yes, so I am not going to lie. I did not do anything public, at least in Mecklenburg County. I was on a panel in Oakland, California with the Greenlighting Institute around how to implement transportation and land use practice and that sort of thing. And I did that with my work hat on and then brought in a little bit of Mecklenburg County, Charlotte Mecklenburg County Planning Commission things. I have been taking American Planning Association classes online at planning.org/passport. I took a really interesting one on navigating politics of climate planning. So I just want to suggest that to folks if you want to do like a deep dive into learning.
Thank you. That's good. And I will also say that Coursera, which is my drug of choice, also offers many, and you can sign up for all of them. And then all of a sudden you realize that you probably shouldn't have done that. But Coursera also offers courses on planning if people want to take them. Commissioner Winokur.
I've been trying to get more engaged locally, reaching out and kind of in my neighborhood. Had the pleasure to MC the Hilly Chantilly 5K.
Whoa.
Very exciting event. And but also staying in touch with local neighborhood associations near where I reside, talking about some of the developments that are coming down the road. Thank you.
Cool beans. Commissioner Seeley.
While I didn't attend them myself, I did organize people in my neighborhood attending the North Inner and Northeast Inner, as they both are part of the NOTA community. I've been attending quite a few arts and culture activities, did 2 this month. That's obviously part of my job, but also part of this commission as far as I'm concerned. Arts and culture should be very important in the planning process. And then also attended the Irbies, which I was nominated for an Irby as well. So yes, but did not win.
Brush with greatness for us.
Yeah, always not always the bridesmaid, never the bride. I don't know how I'm never going to beat Mary Newsom. So
Commissioner McDonald. Children.
I did my usual round of local meetings, the Derrida Matters, Allen Hills, and I'm branching out, although I've been doing that for a while, Grove Park on the east side, just attending some of their activities. I worked the polls, which was a great place to make personal connections with engaged people that I will be following up with, because there were several that wanted to understand more about planning and are well connected in their communities. And I also attended the Housing Summit, which was a great overview of the housing problem, the shortage that we're dealing with right now. I think that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Lansdale.
Most of my work was done at the CRTPO, so I would urge you, if you pulled out one agenda to read from your agenda packet, would be to look at this month's CRTPO. I had some great insight into the challenges of the red line versus toll lanes versus open lanes on I-77 and what that means for the CRTPO's vision. I also would recommend that you take a closer look at the report, the 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Socio-Economic Data, which does as Commissioner Weldon's indicated, some great insight about what we look like in the future. And on the fun side, but a serious side, I attended the event for homelessness at the Independent Picture Show this weekend to a packed crowd, and had a great time there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Harvey ran out of the room trying to get out of his, but he's back. And Commissioner Harvey, what's going on with you this month?
Last month was all about the polls and the election. In addition to one of the other things that I do, we added the same number of voters in our precinct that did not exist the last election. So one, getting them familiar and registered. So that's what.
All right. Cool beans. I guess I will go. I'm last. I'll go. I did some things. I did a community meeting for rezoning down on Park Road. It's the oldest property on Park Road south of Woodlawn. It was kind of interesting, but I did it in my car, which was kind of fun. I said, don't call on me to give any input. And of course the attorney does. I did several community discussions where I went and I gave my little talk. And I did this at Dilworth, I did it at Plaza Midwood, and I did it for the South Park Area Neighborhoods Board. And what I do with that is I always tell people it's not what you do that matters, it's why you do it. And so I give them the why we do planning talk, not what we're doing. And I get a lot of people, I get some confusion back from folks about what we're doing. They don't understand what is community area planning. I'm not in that neighborhood, it's too big, that sort of thing. So if you kind of put it in a context of why we do these things, that you can't just throw your poop out the window. You have to actually plan to where you're going to throw your poop. It's much better adventure. It's true. That's why zoning exists. I also spoke with the Greater Charlotte Apartment Association. I was at the UNCC State of the Housing Summit. I also got to be there for the lunch, which was ahead of time, which is a smaller group of folks, where there was a good discussion with Dr. Chu about what this truly meant to the area. There were city council and county commission folks there. I don't know that anybody's mind was changed grandly. I would hope that some enlightenment did come. We are in a deficit of housing. It's as simple as that. Nothing that we can do to get away from that. I've got meetings set up with South Park Community Partners, University City Partners, and going to get one, my afternoon task is to get one with Center City Partners so that we can have those municipal service districts come chat with us. RJ, West Boulevard Coalition is having a meeting tomorrow night.
At the same time that we're having our meeting.
I called over to try and get on the agenda, but I hadn't gotten a call back. Let's talk about that afterwards. Because I want to go over and, again, I told you guys at the beginning of this, I was going to try and get around to 11 or 12 neighborhoods. I think I've gotten to 4 so far. And unless you count South Park area span, which is 35 communities, but I don't know, whatever. I've got a meeting set up with Commissioner Johnson to see if I can understand what's going on in District 4. And Council Member Johnson, sorry, did not mean to confuse anyone. And several other meetings. But again, I'm trying to get out there and tell people why we're doing this, not what we're doing. That's about it for me. You guys have homework for the next month. I sent you an email this morning, and it is the TED Talk by Charles Montgomery. That would be, I guess, a recommendation from Commissioner Wilden. But get the book, Happy City. It's at the library. If you cannot read, you can download it on Libby. It's an audiobook. Okay. And, or you can just watch the TED Talk if you want the digested version of it, because that's the kind of person you are. But I would tell you that that's something to do, because it's a very interesting look at, we talk about land use, but this is about urban design, which there are two different things. I see, and I'm going to close. We got our meeting schedule up for next year. Do we have to approve this? Oh, yeah, we already approved this at executive committee. So thank goodness I don't actually have to do anything. Are we going to have a Halloween meeting?
No, it's not on.
We could possibly have a Halloween meeting. We'll have to talk to Dave. But if you want, take a picture of this, put all of these dates in your calendar. It's in your agenda packet. Gosh, Candace is so, by the way, everybody, next month, Candace, is that our last month with you for a while? If you hadn't noticed, Candace has been eating a lot lately. No, she's been eating a lot, and so she's going to go on a diet for 3 months, apparently. And you know how it's like celebrities. They go on a diet, they go off to Palm Springs, and they come back, and they look amazing after they come back. But
I'm glad you brought that up.
yeah.
I have Miss Yolanda Jones with me. She will be shadowing me today. Well, she did today, and she'll be shadowing me in December, because she will be taking over my planning commission duties while I am out.
Yeah.
She's coming back, so don't worry.
Candace told me that she was going to be out for 3 months. Is that still the plan?
Yes.
And you also told me you were going to name your baby after me, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Just say it, putting it out there in the universe, people. I think we've gotten to the part of the meeting where it requires a motion for us to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Wilden.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Wilden. That motion will be accepted unanimously. Get out of here.
Yes, sir.